The creators posting their "I hit 100K in 6 months" screenshots aren't lying, but they're also not telling you about the inherited audience from TikTok, the spouse covering bills, or the 14-hour days that lasted exactly 8 weeks before the breakdown. Their timeline worked for their life. It was never meant to work for yours. I've run 4 channels simultaneously. I know what aggressive timelines actually cost. I've posted 20 plus videos, some weeks trying to match other people's pace. And I know exactly why comparing your 4 hours to someone's 40 makes you feel like you're failing when you're not. Because I did it. And it almost killed every channel I built. Here's what's happening to you right now. You're watching channels explode while yours crawls. You're doing everything the advice says. You're posting consistently, well, as consistently as you can manage between your full-time job or your kids' schedules or whatever actual life you're living. And every single "I hit 10K in 90 days" post you see feels like mathematical proof that you're doing something fundamentally wrong. The comparison creates guilt. You should be posting more. You should have better thumbnails. You should be working harder. The guilt kills your consistency because who wants to show up to something that constantly reminds them they're inadequate? The inconsistency confirms the fear. See, you can't even post weekly. Of course, you're failing. And the cycle repeats until you quit entirely. But here's what's actually happening. You're not failing at YouTube. You're failing at something impossible, trying to match someone else's life circumstances. You're not comparing content strategies. You're comparing life infrastructure. Their timeline works for them because they built it for their actual situation. You're trying to execute their timeline with completely different constraints. It's not a fair comparison. It was never meant to be. The cost isn't just slow growth. You can live with slow growth. The real cost is this. You're going to abandon something you actually want to do because the only path you can see requires a life you don't have. You'll quit. Not because the channel couldn't work, because you measured it against the wrong standard until you couldn't take it anymore. Everyone else's timeline was designed for their life, not yours. And once you see what that actually means, the whole comparison trap falls apart. You've been operating under the belief that there's a correct speed to grow a channel. Post 3 times a week minimum, hit 1K subs by month 3, monetize by month 6, scale to 10K by end of year 1. You hear it everywhere. And when you don't hit those numbers, you think you're behind. You think you're failing. You think something's wrong with you. But here's the actual math. Let's say a creator has 40 hours per week to dedicate to YouTube, no day job. Partner covers bills, or they're retired, or independently wealthy, or whatever their situation is. You have 4 hours per week. You work full time. You have responsibilities. The math is simple. They're working 10 times more hours than you. Their 3 months equals your 30 months of equivalent work time. Same work, same effort, different timelines. This isn't about discipline. It's about infrastructure. That creator posting their 10K by Q1 goal built on circumstances you don't have. No day job means 40 extra hours per week. Existing audience from another platform means they started with momentum you're building from zero. Spouse covering expenses means they can invest in equipment, outsource editing, buy software, take risks. These aren't small advantages. They're completely different starting conditions. Your constraints aren't obstacles. They're your actual reality. And the advice you're consuming, it wasn't designed for your context. It was designed for theirs. So here's what actually works when you can't just copy someone else's timeline. I'm calling it context-aware timeline building. 3 steps that account for your real life, not someone's aspirational blueprint. Step 1, audit your real capacity, not what you wish you had, not what you think you should have, what you can actually sustain for 12 months without burning out. Sit down right now and count your available hours this week. Actually count them. Work, sleep, family, other responsibilities. What's left? If it's 3 hours, that's your number. If it's 10 hours, that's your number. If it's 30 minutes, that's your number. No judgment, just accurate data, because you can't build a sustainable plan on fictional capacity. And here's what's important. This isn't about maximum capacity, it's about sustainable capacity. What can you maintain for a year without wanting to quit? I learned this the hard way. When I was running 4 channels, some weeks I'd produce 20 plus videos. My maximum capacity was insane. My sustainable capacity, about 6 hours a week of actual creative work before everything started falling apart. The channels that died built on maximum capacity. The one that's still growing built on sustainable capacity. Step 2, do the actual math. Take your hours per week and compare them to the timelines you're seeing. If someone posts their "I hit 10K in 6 months" story, ask yourself how many hours per week were they working? If you don't know, assume it's more than yours. A lot more. Someone working 40 hours per week grows 13 times faster than someone working 3 hours per week at the same quality level. Their 6 months is your 6.5 years. That's not failure. That's physics. This changes everything. Suddenly, that "I'm so behind" feeling, it's based on comparing different math. You're not behind their timeline. You're on a different timeline entirely, one that fits your actual life. And once you see the math clearly, the guilt dissolves. You're not slow. You're working within your constraints, which is the only thing that was ever going out to work anyway. Step 3, filter all advice through your context. Before you adopt any strategy, any workflow, any growth hack, ask yourself one question. Does this require time, resources, or infrastructure I don't have? If the answer is yes, it's not your strategy. Not yet. Maybe not ever, and that's fine. Most advice assumes infrastructure, full-time availability, budget for outsourcing, experience with software, an existing audience to leverage. If you don't have those things, the advice isn't wrong. It's just not for you. I built an entire automation system thinking I could engineer my way past my constraints. And the system works. It's brilliant for what it does, but I was still burning out because I was using the system to try to match timelines designed for different circumstances. The automation didn't fail. I was asking it to solve the wrong problem. Here's what happened when I finally accepted my actual constraints. I shut down 3 of the 4 channels, kept 1, took my first real break in 2 years. Then I rebuilt everything around my sustainable capacity, not my maximum capacity. I posted less, way less, about 40% less content than I had been producing. My revenue went up by over a quarter. The channel that survived, the one built for my actual life, not someone else's. The channels that died weren't bad channels. They were good channels built on borrowed timelines, and borrowed timelines are like borrowed money. Eventually you have to pay it back. With interest. The interest is burnout. I paid it multiple times. You don't have to. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. I tracked my own channel failures, every channel that died. Built on unsustainable timelines I copied from creators with completely different life context. I tried posting daily when I had 2 hours available. I tried matching the production quality of full-time creators who had teams and budgets. I burned out within months. Every single time. The pattern was consistent. I'd see a successful creator's workflow. I'd think I can do that. I'd implement it. It would work for a few weeks, maybe a month if I was really pushing. Then I'd hit the wall. Energy gone. Creativity dead. You couldn't even open Premiere Pro without my chest getting tight. And the channel would slowly die because I couldn't sustain the pace I'd borrowed from someone else's life. The channel that worked? I designed the timeline around my constraints first, not around someone else's results. I asked, what can I actually maintain? Not, what should I be able to maintain if I was better at this? What's real? The answer was 1 video per week, sometimes 2 if the circumstances aligned. That was it. Slower than most advice tells you to go. Way slower than the 10K in 90 days crowd. But sustainable. And here's what happened. The channel's still growing, not explosively, steadily. The quality's better because I'm not making content while running on fumes. My decision-making improved because I'm not constantly panicking about whether I'm behind. And the guilt, gone. Because I'm not measuring against borrowed timelines anymore. I'm measuring against my own capacity. And within that constraint, I'm actually doing fine. The lesson isn't slow down and you'll succeed. The lesson is sustainable pace beats borrowed timelines every time. The channel that's still publishing years from now wins over the channel that quit after trying to be someone else. I know because I quit being someone else 3 separate times before I figured this out. Remember those 100K in 6 months screenshots at the beginning? They're real. They happened. But they're also completely irrelevant to your path. Because I've been on both sides of this. I've tried to match aggressive timelines. I've built channels that exploded fast, and I've watched them collapse just as fast when the borrowed pace became impossible to maintain. Your future doesn't have to look like theirs because your current reality doesn't look like theirs. Different available time, different resources, different constraints, same platform, completely different infrastructure. And once you accept that, really accept it, not just intellectually, but in how you plan, the pressure lifts. Here's what I want you to do right now. Write down your actual available hours this week, not aspirational, not if I just woke up earlier or if I was more disciplined. Actual, the real number. Then take whatever goal you've been holding and divide it by your hours versus someone working 40 hours per week. If you have 4 hours, that's a 10x time difference. Their timeline becomes yours multiplied by 10. That's your real timeline, not failure, reality. Build your goals around that number, not around what you saw in someone's success post, not around what YouTube advice says you should achieve, around what's actually possible with the life and constraints you have, because slow growth that you can sustain beats explosive growth into burnout and quitting. Every single time. I learned this by failing at the second one multiple times. You don't have to. Your constraints aren't the problem. Trying to ignore them is. Build for your actual life. Your path will look different than theirs. And that's exactly how it should be. You see why their timelines don't fit your life, but seeing it doesn't stop the guilt when you can only manage one video this month. Why guilt about not posting enough is engineered into the system. If it's on screen, that's the mechanism.